Shalom Elohim Yisrael Yehonathan Dawid with you here humbly so with another edition of Yahweh for Hebrews and Christians, and this will be released on January the 14th 2024, the year of their Lord, continuing our now famous Bimilo Tal Shali series in his own words, episode number 58. The Bahyith will be destroyed. The Bahyith will be destroyed. That's the temple. Episode number 58. Now, why I've been sharing why this series? Because of these troubled times and because what the great deception is. And now we're getting into it. We're still on Tuesday morning of the last week of the Messiah's Besor message on this earth in his own words. Boots on the ground. We're still on Tuesday morning. Now, there's troubled times. Wars. I did a very brief, I could have done a whole series, I've done it before, a whole session today on wars. But just currently speaking of wars going on. We had 210,000 deaths in Myanmar, Asia, since 1948. 60,000 deaths in Israel, Palestine, Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Yemen. All this in Asia just since 1948. 57,000 deaths in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Benin, Togo, Algeria, Tunisia, Chad, the Ivory Coast, Mauritania, Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, Morocco, Libya, all in Africa just since 2002. 220,000 deaths in Russia and Ukraine just last year. So we got wars in Asia. We got wars in Europe. Africa, we got 13,000 deaths in Sudan just last year. And then those are just wars. But then there are currently 15 conflicts going on worldwide with 8.5 million deaths since 1964. I mean, that's just my lifetime. That's just my lifetime. You got just conflicts, 8.5 million deaths. Then they have another category called skirmishes. And you got 5 million deaths in skirmishes since 1948. Mexico leads the world in deaths by skirmishes on the average in the last 5 years. And you wonder why they streaming up here, left, right, and center. And why Trump wanted the wall. You know, there are only 10 countries in the world not at war. And you know who leads the whole world in war involvement? You guessed it right. The good old US of A is number one in the world in war involvement. 107. You can go right on, get your smartphone out and 2 dumb thumbs and just click on the internet and pull this stuff up. 107 wars. We're also number one in conflicts the United States are involved in. Wars and conflicts. Number one in the world. Our fingers are in all these things. Now, just think of these numbers. If you just say like 8.5 million people, it's really more than that. Because what the man, the woman, the child that dies, they also no longer can procreate and bring on new souls. So those souls will never come to light. And then those souls never come to light. Oh, the horrors and the heartbreak of bloodthirstiness reaches deep. It just reaches deep, going beyond the numbers, because the numbers are really infinite. For one man-child that dies, is killed in war, and then he doesn't procreate and carry on his genes. And it goes on from that. Then his would have been son doesn't have a grandson and a great-grandson and a great-great-grandson. It goes on and on and on. So you have a lot of options out there of people putting fear in you about all these wars that are going on, have always been going on. But this is nothing to be distressed about. And Yahweh was going to let us know that as we begin our first scripture, Matthew 24, 1 and 2. because this is, I wanted to open up with that because it shows you just the history of man slaughtering man just from 1948, a very important date in world history. Matthew 24, 1 and 2. Yahweh showed this predicting the Bahyith being destroyed, the temple. Then Yahweh went out and departed from the temple. And his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Yahweh said to them, do you see all these things? Surely I say to you, not one stone will be left here on another that will not be thrown down. Wow. Don't you think their collective jaws dropped? What? Not one stone? You're talking about this edifice? This great edifice? This is why they were like, think about it. This is the third year of the ministry. This is on Tuesday. He only got a few days left before they string him up. He never looked at the temple before. How many times he's been in and out of there? Why are they showing it to him now? Because we got Pesach coming up, another great high time, and all the activity and buzz going around, and they feel that this is it. That this man they've been following for 3 years, this is it. And they want to say, look at this grand splendor that we're in. They are excited. This is it. He's getting ready to really claim this thing. And they are just giddy. They know that this man is about to reveal himself, but they still had that 8-track thinking. They still had that Betamax thinking. They still thinking back old school. They still have him boxed in, believing that he is going to claim this and everything is going to come through them. They are going to be his cabinet members. They're going to overthrow the evil, wicked Roman government. And Israel will reign again like Shlomo. Look at these buildings. Look at these great edifices. This going to be destroyed? What do you mean? This is the very pivotal symbol of our faith and identity. You know our Hebrew because of this temple. We identify with this. We are married to this. This is us. This symbolizes us. 3 pilgrimages a year, the Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, come here. All the world comes here. Millions. I mean, this is like your town having the Super Bowl 3 times a year. Can you believe that? With influx of millions of dollars. So many industries are supported by this. I used to live, for a time I was living with my grandmother. She lived near Pimlico racetrack. And the neighborhoods just couldn't wait. Once a year, they made a come up because people all over the country and probably in the world will inundate these impoverished, because the area around Pimlico was impoverished. And we live not far from there. But you can sell your parking spot. I mean, you rent it out, and even though it was yours, it's public land. The park in front of your house, you can get $50 or whatever, and they'll pay you, and so they can park and walk to the racetrack. People will open up their backyards and let cars pile into their backyards. They will sell things, sodas and trinkets and everything. The whole neighborhood made a come up during the Pimlico racetrack, the Preakness. So here we got this 1,000 times bigger, 3 times a year coming here to this Bahyith. You got a building that's over 150 feet tall, limestone. Took 46 years to make. It is the largest building in the classical world at 450 acres, 10 entrances, multiple courtyards, multiple ritual baths, and you had the sacrifices there, and you had the Holy and the Holy of Holies. This is ground zero for the world to have access to Yahweh. This is the portal. And you saying this is going to be destroyed? Here we are. January 14th, 2024, the year of the Lord. And we got people over there, and I was over there at the so-called prayer wall. Does it look? It's a wall. So by definition, as a wall, that means stones are standing on top of one another. Yahweh in his own mouth said that not one stone will be standing on top of one another. So the question arises, is that a wall of the bed of Yah. Was that the wall? Was that part of the temple? Unless Yahweh can lie, then the obvious answer is no. That is not the temple. And that's important. That is not the location of the temple. Not unless Yahweh can lie. Because he said not one stone will be left on top of another. And I've been there at the wall. Let's take this to Mark. This is important. That's important. That's an important fact. Okay? Mark 13, 3 to 13. Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, opposite to the temple. Okay, so now he said that. And then everyone's like, what? So he walks on up the mountain, going this same track. He goes from this tree up the mountain, from the Mount of Olives. This is where he's going to be sacrificed. And down to the temple. In this last week of his ministry, he's going back and forth, this same route that takes him from that tree. And right across the road is where the ruddy heifer is sacrificed. He goes down this Mount of Olives, go past that same fig tree, and into the temple. This is important. Back and forth. It's a little bit less than 1 mile, because you cannot travel more than a mile on Shabbat. Because he goes from that holy place and walks up to that tree on Shabbat. All right. So now, 4 main disciples, Peter, James, and John, and Andrew, asked him privately, once he got up there to that place, they don't realize that this is where he's going to be sacrificed. Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when all these things will be fulfilled? So they are in shock, and these main 4 men want to know what's going on. And I'm telling you, I'm sure this is when Judas Iscariot was like, what's he talking about? This is not the time to be talking about this. I'm talking about your death and destruction of the temple. He's starting to be disillusioned. And they all are. But these 4 dared to ask him 2 questions. That when will this happen, and when will these things happen? That's one question. And what will be the sign of these things being fulfilled? So there's 2 different questions that they're asking here. So of course he's going to answer the questions. And he answers, take heed that no one deceives you, because many will come in my name saying, I am he, and will be deceived. Stop. The first thing he says is, take heed that you be not deceived, because many will come in my name. And already we got new brews, she-brews, waking up Hebrews being deceived. Because the first thing he said, they're going to come in my name. So already you should have no argument against Christians, against Muslims, or anybody calling on going to Buddha, Jesus Christ, Allah. None of that. This is not about any of them. He says they're coming in my name. False ones. So what you have here, Yisrael, this first, you're stumbling from the very beginning, because you're fighting against people who don't even call on his name. It's not about that. It's those who call on his name who will be deceiving you. And many of you do not realize that you're part of that, particularly when you misconfigure his name. The Father's name is Yahweh. His Son's name is Yahweh. You can call him Yahshua. That's fine. It's like a poetic version of Yahweh. Just like Yah is a poetic version of Yahweh. So you have Yah, Yahweh. You have Yahshua, Yahweh. And in these days that we are in now, that I'm speaking in right now, these are the latter days, not the last days, the latter days. He says that many will come in his name, saying that he is them. He is he. They're not going to be coming in the name of Jesus Christ, because nobody's going to be fooled by that. All you brews are waking up. They will be fooled when someone comes in a so-called Hebrew name. So that's number 1. Then he says, but when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be troubled, because such things must happen, but the end is not yet. This is why I say, why are people on social media in their ministries talking about all these wars and making a big deal out of these wars like it's a big deal. In all the history of the world, I had this now. I should have wrote it down. Maybe I'll give it to you next week. There's only been a few months in the history of the world where there was no war. Total. In 6,000 years of time. There's currently only 10 countries not at war. So stop getting people riled up about wars. Yahushua said himself that the end is not yet based on all these wars. There's always been war. But here's the thing that people also get mixed up. This is what he says. This is Yahushua speaking. Because nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. That is the one you want to be concerned about. He didn't say nations and kingdoms. There's one nation going against one nation and one kingdom going against one kingdom. Esau hating on Jacob. That's it. All the world comes down to these two nations. And anyone else will have to latch on to one of these two. It's Esau against Jacob. Nation to nation, kingdom to kingdom. All these other things, they don't matter. This comes out of Yahushua's mouth. And there will be earthquakes in various places, and there will be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. That means these things are routine matters. People all, hey, you hear about this earthquake? Baltimore just had an earthquake a couple weeks ago. So what? These are the beginnings. Famines. When was there not a famine? That's how we got into Mizraim, because of a famine. So-called Egypt. We went into Egypt because of a famine. So stop acting like it's news. Are you going to also tell me that, hey, guess what? Kennedy got shot? That's not news. What is to be looked at here is people coming in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. Coming in his name, deceiving people. You have to have discernment of another thing. Of the attacks are by Esau against Yahweh's chosen ones. That is the focus. Don't get lost in the forest. Verse 9 continues. But watch out for yourselves, because they will deliver you up to councils, and you will be beaten in all the synagogues. You will be brought before the rulers and kings of them for my sake, for testimony to them. And the Besor. Now, so has that happened? Did you read the book of Acts? That has already happened. See, the thing about prophecy, it's cyclical. Go back to the Yard for Hebrews and Christians back in May 2020, where I give more detail on some of this. And I will speak to some of that now. But prophecies are not just one time. They are cyclical for each generation. Each generation must go through these things, because each generation must respect the signs of the times. Each generation must look for the Messiah, because Yahushua is justified to come at any time his Father sends him. So each generation must have legitimate claim to Yahushua being coming at their time. If this was not true, then there's no need to have a sense of urgency. There's always a sense of urgency. What's going to happen here is now this is getting ramped up in the home, because husbands and wives will go against each other. Children will turn on their parents. Families, brothers and sisters are going to think they're doing right by this new government that's in the name of Yahweh. Just got deep there. They're not going to be turning their family members in by a surface evil government like the Romans. It's going to look like a righteous government. They're going to be turning one another in. Family members are going to be fighting against each other. Not turn them into an evil government, but what looks like to be a righteous government. That's deep. Do not gloss over that. Verse 10. And the Besor must be first preached to all the nations. There we are right now. Because this is the first time in the history of the world where the entire world can, right here on your smartphone, you can go ahead and speak to anybody and get this message out. Now, the first century forefathers did indeed spread this Besorah to all of the known world without internet. But once again, prophecy is replicable. It repeats because each generation must have respect for the word of Yahweh. Each generation must have an urgency for his son. Each generation must receive this as imminent in their lifetime. If that was not so, then there would be no worries in the 50s and the 60s, whatever. You would say, hey, he's not coming for another 100 years. Why should we live a life of sacrifice? Who's going to want to leave the clubs and leave pornography and adultery if they know he's not coming for 200 years? Why can't they just wait until they get old? But each generation must seek Yahweh. Each generation must be ready for Yahweh. And this Besorah message, Yahweh is primed to come at any time, because the entire world has this message. But when they arrest you and deliver you up, do not worry beforehand or premeditate what you will speak. But whatever is given to you in that hour, speak. It is for you to speak by Ruach HaKodesh. Not going to be planning this out. It's not going to be scripted. Now, brother will betray brother, death to death, and a father his child, and the children will rise up against their parents and cause them to be put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but he who endures to the end will be saved. Oh man, and the Hasatan tried big time to really have this implemented worldwide with his latest poison with the so-called COVID. Because families broke up all over the place, but they didn't get the unified government yet. They're trying, it's working, it's in its process. Catholics and Jews are hugging and kissing. Islam, they're accepting everybody in Christianity. Everybody's kumbayaing together. Jews are turning to Yeshua right and left and center. Torah movement, all the white men, they know they cannot be behind us. Everybody's accepting the Torah, the law. Everybody's going back to law abidance of the Torah. That's the reason for this series. Because all the black Hebrew Israelites, everybody's calling themselves waking up. And all of them, every last slither of them, are going back to Moshe. Going right back to him. Everybody's going to get themselves back up to a yoke of bondage. Everybody's going to the desert. Everybody's putting in that old school. Everybody putting their bell bottoms on. Going back to the old school. Oh, the devil loves it. Esau loves it because this is his way of getting everybody unified back together under a yoke of bondage. Oh man, oh Father, renewed persecution is going to come, family dividing, lawlessness and lovelessness is abounding. Oh, this is it. False messiahs, everybody's coming together. He said, take heed, the first thing Yahweh said, they're going to come in his name. That means they're not going to be saying no Jesus and Jehovah. They're going to be saying Yahshua, Yeshua, Yahweh, all that stuff. And people are going to be falling hook, line, and sinker. You know, this what Yahweh is doing, this prophecy is far-ranging, covering thousands of years. Let's go to Revelation 12, 1-2. This is about the woman and the child and the dragon. All right? Now the great sign appeared in Hashmaim, a woman clothed in the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Now this is a lot here. I just want to get to a point. Okay. Then with the child she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in Hashmaim. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his head. So again, these things I spoke to in more intensity in 2020 in May. Look at all these about the seals and the bowls and the judgments. All of that is important. But remember, Yahushua said nation against nation. Who we have here is the assembly, the called out ones, Yahweh's chosen people. We have the dragon who's attacking because he know, as Yahweh said, that his seed will destroy that serpent who deceived Eve. Not seeds, seed. And that seed is his son. And that son is Yahushua. And his son birthed us. So Hasatan is seeking to destroy him. Now we know he bruised his heel already. Yahushua did indeed die. But all these horns and crowns, this is Yisrael. You have this is Yisrael. It is not foreign nations. This is Yisrael. That's why you have this Hasatan works through Yisrael. 10 horns. You had the 10 tribes, the 10 southern tribes, separated by and the 2 heads is the 2 northern tribes. Okay, so we have Yisrael. Yisrael. This is not. Don't look for other religions. This is what's going to look like what is right. And this thing about beasts and dragons is the spirit of it. It's not going to look evil. It's not going to look wicked. He says his tail drew 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. This has already happened. This is when Hasatan got cast out of heaven. And the dragon, and he took 1/3 of the angels with him. And the dragon stood before the woman and who was ready to give birth to devour the child as soon as it was born. Hasatan tried to have Hamashiach killed before he was even born. That's why Herod had the 3 wise men go get him, bring him back to me. So she bore a mad child, and this was Yahushua, who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. Now, of course, our box thinking was that he was going to do it when he was born at that time, 2,000 years ago. Of course, that was not the plan. He is going to indeed rule for iron for 1,000 years, but not at that time. So at her child, she was caught up to Yahweh and his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by Yahweh, and there she was fed there 1,260 days. So we are the offspring. We were spread throughout the world. Melanin peoples all over, we all mixed. So Hasatan really cannot, it was for our benefit, because if we're in one place, everybody in Israel at one time, he easily can peg us out. And we can be destroyed because the numbers are overwhelming against us. Yahweh showing his wisdom, he allowed us to be scattered amongst all the peoples. Verse 7. And war broke out in heaven, and Michael and his Malachim fought with the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was there a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world, and was cast into earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And that has already happened. The attack, this Revelation 12 spans thousands of years. It even predates history with the casting out of Hasatan and his angels to earth, which destroyed the earth, which when we get to so-called Genesis 1:1, that is a recreation of the current earth we're in now. The 7th world. This is the 7th world. And then this one's going to be destroyed, and then we have the 8th and final world. But in the meantime, Hasatan tried to destroy Yahushua when he came to this earth from the very beginning and couldn't do it. When he failed, he went after us. In the meantime, the temple was destroyed, as Yahushua said, and we were spread out from Yisrael. So now Hasatan can't really peg us as a group, but he can peg us as an individual. And it's those who are Yahweh's are those who call in the unleavened name of Yahushua HaMashiach. The Bahyith is you, We're not a collective Bahyith. We're spread out. So now Hasatan has to destroy the whole world. He's after everything. Everybody. There's collateral damage on everybody. Everybody had to be hit with his plagues and pestilence, vaccinations, inoculations, wars. Verse 10. Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength and kingdom of our Yahweh, the kingdom of our Yahweh, and the power of his Messiah has come. For the accuser of our brethren who has accused them before our mighty one day and night has been cast down. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of his testimony. And they did not love their lives to the death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who live in them. Woe to the heavens of the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you, and having great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. So woe is to us, but the testimony we have, what keeps us to overcome him, is the word of Yahweh. So it's the word of Yahweh. That being the case, that Besor has been spread throughout all the world. But the unleavened name of Yahweh is what's going to keep us. So now that means Hasatan has to go through Yahweh's people. It's not going to be you can't fool the whole world with Buddha. You can't fool the whole world with anything else other than with the Hebrew revelation of Yahshua. So he's going to go through there. He's going to go through Moses. Because the whole world, all the nations of the world have laws and rules. And they are all founded, believe it or not, on the laws of Moses. The whole world goes by that now. And then you go to court, and somebody breaks into your house. Doesn't matter where in Russia, you have recourse. All the nations. China, they have laws and courts. All the nations have a foundation of Moses. So it's through the law that Hasatan is going to use to deceive the whole world. So this begins with the destruction of the temple and Yahweh's peoples being spread throughout all the world. And now, at the point in time, everybody's waking up and everybody's doing what? Going right back to Moses. So what's going on now is, with all the persecutions, the destruction of the temple, the dispersion, the Spanish Inquisition, the papal bulls, the transatlantic slave trade, which began with Esau and Ishmael, our two brothers, our big half brother and our blood brother. They're the ones that pointed us out in so-called Africa when the man from the north came down to get us. And they helped out and they propelled and they started the slave trade against Yahweh's anointed peoples and spread it throughout all the world. Seals 1 through 5 has already happened in Israel. Seals 1 through 5 have already happened. War against all of Yahweh's melanin-rich peoples. Germs, pestilence, diseases, vaccinations, inoculations, the land grabs, world pollution of the air and the land and the sea. All these things have come and gone. We are already past the first 5 seals. What are we waiting for now? The 6th seal. Our final scripture for today, Revelation 6, 12 through 17. Revelation 6, 12 through 17. Look, when he opened the 6th seal, and look, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded, and as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and an island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men and the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man hid themselves in the caves and the rocks and the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand. That's what we're waiting for, Yisrael. That is next on the agenda for the final return of Hamashiach. You got this earthquake, and in that earthquake, that's the resurrection of the saints fallen. It's not going to be televised. It's not going to be witnessed. You're not going to see it. The people who live on earth aren't going to see that resurrection. That's because you look at the fifth seal, the saints are asking, how long, Father? When is this going to end? In Daniel 12, Daniel asked the same thing. When is it going to end? And the angel said, when we are trampled like dust. We are trampled like dust. That means we have no power left. We are trampled to nothing. That's what it says in Daniel 12. And in Revelation 6, on the fifth seal, the saints ask the same thing. When is this going to end? And by the sixth seal, that's when the trials, our trials end, and the resurrection happens on the sixth seal. Because the first five seals, we have been gone through all of our pain and misery for over 2,000 years. Since the destruction of the temple, the Bahyith of Yah. Since the destruction of the old access to Yah. This is why this is critical, this series. The destruction of the temple destroyed the old access. Actually, when Yahweh died, he said, Zay Nigmal, it is finished. But since people didn't get it, 70 AD, they got it now because it's been destroyed. Now it has already been rebuilt again, and they are going to once again get all those who to be deceived, hook, line, and sinker, going back to that same access to Yahweh, and the rebuilding of a third temple, which I believe is already built. This is important, Yisrael, because Yahweh says the first thing is don't be deceived. They're going to come in my name. And we got everybody, including Jews, are calling on the name of so-called Yeshua right now. And they got the temple, they got the red heifer, they got the ruddy heifer, and they ready to deceive the whole world. The earthquake is coming, Yisrael. The earthquake is coming. And those who live on the earth are going to be deceived. This Western world, the Western Hemisphere, is going to be shattered. You're going to lose all internet. All technology is going to be destroyed with this earthquake. And we'll be back into the caveman days. And at that time, Yisrael will be journeying to the Kodesh land, the Holy Land. We're going to be still on that journey, and Yahshua is going to protect us as we on our way over, and we're going to have companions come with us. And we know later on there's going to be another earthquake for the Eastern world. But that's what we're going to end now. We're still here on Tuesday morning. We're going to pick this up, the abomination and tribulation. I want you to take these things into consideration, Israel, because you're hearing stuff you haven't heard from anywhere before. That those first five seals have already happened. That the destruction of the temple was the destruction of old access to Yahweh. That a new one is coming up, and that's going to be the new access to Yahweh, which is deception. And that the deception is going to come through Hebrew names. Not Western world, not Christian names, and not Islamic names. Not Eastern religion names. So this is something that I need you to consider, because you're not hearing this anywhere else. But until then, till next week, I ask for your continued prayers. I bless you, dear Brother Joe, for your prayers for me, and I need others to continue to pray and support this ministry. Shalom Aleichem, peace be on you.